All right. So first off, thank all Acam members, APMD visitors, friends, and just overall anyone who had a chance to come in here and see Dr. Cohen. Today's lecture is going to be hydration, supporting the immune system and restoring health. So I have the pleasure and honor of introducing Dr. Howard Hinden. So not only is he extremely involved in the Acam world, but also he does have his own organization that he heads up. And collaboration cures is something that I'm sure I'll touch on, but without reading too much, your bio officer. You take it from here, sir?
I will. Thank you, Jordan. And I'm glad that you're getting more front and center time. Eventually, I can envision you replacing us.
I'm learning from the best, sir. Learn from the best.
Yeah, so I'm Howard Hinden. I am the vice president of Acam. Really happy to be part of Acam. And I'm also the current president of APMD. And together, the two groups have formed this campaign, Collaboration Cures, with the belief that no one discipline has all the answers, but working together, we can provide more optimal healthcare. And we try to bring you topics and speakers who bridge the gap between different disciplines. And tonight's is a particular subject that really spells that out. First, I want to introduce my co-host, Pat Mcbride, Dr. Pat Mcbride, who is also current board member of the AAPMD and part of the education committee that is putting together the program for our Collaboration Cures 2020, which is just being shifted to a virtual meeting. And I know we will tell you more about that later. Hi, Pat.
Hi, Howie. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us tonight. This is going to be really exciting to have a conversation with Dana. We've been looking forward to it, and just keep on coming on in.
Yeah, so before we go into the topic, Pat, why don't you just introduce Dana? And
Sure. And I first met Dana about a year and a half ago, and when we were at a conference, and I was very intrigued by her concept of this book, Quench, that she was just publishing. And she's nationally renowned internal and integrative medicine specialist, and she uses a multidisciplinary approach to treat her patients, which has helped thousands of patients, literally thousands of patients. And she uses a variety of conventional and complementary therapies. So you have a foot in both worlds, inside and outside of the box. And so that allows you to integrate and speak with all kinds of other practitioners and partner with them for the best interest of your patients. She's been in practice for nearly 2 decades, and she trained with Dr. Ronald Hoffman, who's a pioneer of integrative medicine and founder of the Hoffman Institute in New York City, which many of us are aware of. And she also is the author of a wonderful book, Quench, Beat Fatigue, Drop Weight, and Heal Your Body Through the New Science of Optimum Hydration. We all think we know about hydration. We know nothing about hydration until we read this book. So welcome, Dr. Cohen, and we're looking forward to hearing what you have to say.
Thank you.
And I think this is particularly important because certainly in this COVID times, I know for myself, wearing a mask all day with gowns and being locked up in a room, not leaving between patients so much. I don't drink enough water, and I'm certainly dehydrating more. And then I noticed, because I just reread the book, that so many of the symptoms of dehydration are very similar to the symptoms of sleep and airway problems. And not only do our patients have problems with being dehydrated, I'll bet so many of us, we're busy, we work hard all day, and we're not exercising, but we're working hard, we're burning energy, and we're using up fluid. So I think this is a particularly great topic. So I think we have a couple of announcements to make. On Thursday, Dr. Avi Hershkowitz, the president of Acam, is going to do, I think, the 5th in his series of eMed talks, making sense of COVID-19. And he brings us the latest news and helps us make sense of all the conflicting news that we're hearing. You know, this whole virus, in my opinion, has been very politicized. And how do we know what to do? There are now 3 or 4 vaccines that are supposedly on the market that may be ready before the end of the year, which would be the most fastest vaccines ever produced. What is our hope? Is this realistic? There's also new information about hydroxychloroquine. And then what do we do? Do we reclose certain areas? What about going back to school? So these topics and others will be discussed, and we want it to be an interactive meeting. So join us Thursday, same time, 9 o'clock. If you haven't registered, you can go to the AAPMD site or the Acam site in order to register. And this is our new banner for our meeting. If you feel it's still warm, it's hot off the presses.
It's hot off the press, yeah.
And then registration should be open soon, I think next week or
Next week, sir. Yep.
Next week. And it's going to be fantastic. I mean, if you went to the meeting and you couldn't decide which track you went to, you don't have to make that decision anymore, because the meeting will occur over 4 days, but the meeting will be open for going back and watching other tracks for 30 days. So you have the opportunity to see all 5 or 6 tracks, and there may be a few other surprises added. So make sure you check on the Acam website or the AAPMD website for the latest schedule, how to register, the new reduced fees, and everything about our virtual meeting. So we look forward to that. And don't forget that Acam, which is the pioneering organization in integrative medicine, really has so much to offer. You want to get the latest news, get on our email list at acam.org and get the news, attend our webinars. We have a whole page on coronavirus resource information that you can use. And then from the AAPMD side, we have webinars every week. We have, 90 or something webinars in our library?
91, I think, at this point.
Yeah, and they're free to AAPMD members. And now we're doing more and more webinars together with Acam. And it will just give you much broader view. And I can see by looking at the attendees that we have both practitioners from both Acam and the AAPMD and practitioners. And this is a topic that'll be good for everybody, not just practitioners, but for the public too, especially in this day and age where more people are going to engage in more self-health care. And one of the ways they can start is by looking at whether they're getting enough hydration. And so with that, let's turn it over. Let's introduce Dana, and let's hear some opening remarks and get us excited about hydration.
Okay. Excuse me. So I think what I want to say first and foremost, if I can affect if I can affect practitioners to even just hydrate yourselves. This information is really from a clinical standpoint. What I found out when writing this book is that water research is unbelievably complicated. And, halfway through it, I was like, whoa, what did I get myself into? This H2O molecule is way more complicated than I ever imagined. But when I really looked at it and wanted to affect as many people as I could, meaning I've always known I've had to write a book and And when the idea of writing a book on hydration came along, I said, that's the book. That's the book that's going to affect the most people. And so my wish and my hope is that tonight that I can really inspire all of you to hydrate better, because and I want to say one thing, and if we can get this point across, that I really honestly believe that learning how to hydrate properly is the single most important thing you can do to treat and prevent chronic illness. It's that important. So it is the first step we must take before we go on a diet, before we take some supplements or medication. We have to learn what it feels like to be really properly hydrated. And unfortunately, there's not a test for that. And I'm not talking about overt dehydration, where you got to go to the hospital and get an IV. I'm talking about this day in, day out, low grade, subclinical, chronic dehydration that is leading to illness and chronic illness. And as a functional medicine doctor, as the airway doctors, and we need to. That's what we're all here for. We're here to prevent and treat chronic illness. And so this is the first place to start. Good night. So, yeah. So I
let me ask you a question.
Sure.
So that in our practice and in many of the practices of AAPMD members, we treat sleep and airway, and looking through the list of symptoms, so many of them are the same for sleep problems and dehydration. And as we were talking before, we wrote a book called GASP, The Hidden Airway Problem, because it's hidden, that people don't recognize it. It gets expressed as other things, and nobody looks at sleep and airway. And I noticed a similarity in Quench, very same thing, that there are things I read in Quench I never even realized were signs of dehydration. And as people get older, they worry about going to the bathroom a lot and peeing a lot, and it's uncomfortable. They don't want to be somewhere where there's not a bathroom available. So it even leads them probably to drink less. So could you talk a little bit about what are symptoms of dehydration? What should we be looking for in ourselves and in other patients?
Okay, so everybody thinks thirst is the first sign of dehydration. I'm going to tell you that if you're thirsty, you're far gone. You're already too far gone. We don't want to, and thirst is just not a good measure. We condition ourselves to override our thirst mechanism, as we don't want to. We don't want to drink if we're working, so and we do lose our sense of thirst as we get older too. So thirst is just not a great way. And if you're thirsty, we want to stave it off before that happens. But some better things, and what I really think first signs and symptoms of dehydration is that afternoon fatigue, and that brain fog. Instead of, we've always thought that maybe that's due to low blood sugar. It still may be, but I have to say, I think more often than not, it's probably not. It's probably this chronic low-grade dehydration. Other things you want to look at, we're meant, as humans, we're meant to get up and pee during the day every 2 or 3 hours. Now, I know there are times I'll sit at my desk for 10 hours straight and not get up to pee once. And I'm like, what am I doing? That's not good. So we're meant to get up, we're meant to go move, and we're meant to pee every 2 or 3 hours. You want to look at your urine color. You want it to be straw colored, light yellow. I always like to say, though, if you're taking B vitamins, that you can't look at the color of your urine because it's going to be bright yellow, right? Dry skin, cognition problems, fatigue, dry mouth, obviously chapped lips, and all those things you're also far gone. Constipation, those are the big ones. Some things you can do to also, a sign is maybe pinch the top of I'm looking at my wrist. You could pinch the top of your wrist. If it tenses up and stays up there, you're probably a little bit dehydrated as well. Soft signs. Unfortunately, once again, we don't have a great, simple test to say, oh, you have low grade dehydration. It doesn't exist. So what I try to teach people in the book is we all need to stop being cut off from our bodies. We need to be in our bodies, feel our bodies, know what it feels like to feel fantastic and hydrated, and move fluidly and freely. And once you know that, then it is unfortunately, it is an hour by hour, day in, day out thing that you have to be aware of at all times. It's hydration is up there with nutrition and sleeping and shelter.
So what are there any questions that be we dentists or physicians who are treating low blood sugar or treating sleep, because daytime sleepiness is a hallmark of both low blood sugar and sleep? Yeah. How do we engage a patient in a conversation about this? Because you have great case histories in your book.
Yeah. So even before I ever thought, to write a book on hydration, I always ask my patients, I get a diet history from them, and I get, how much do you drink? What do you drink with breakfast? What do you drink with lunch? Do you drink enough? Do you think you drink enough water? That's a great question. Do you think you drink enough water? And I can tell you probably 95% of your patients will say no. And those are including like my yogis and my athletes. Nobody does. Nobody thinks about hydration, and we have to make it forefront. And so just ask them, and then I think before you implement anything, you need to talk to them about proper hydrating. And that could be, and it's not necessarily, we'll talk about it, I'm sure, in a few minutes. It's not necessarily about drinking more water, because as I know, and I'm sure many of people listening, there can be days where I'm drinking water all day long and I can't literally quench my thirst, and it's not about drinking more water. It's about getting that water into your cells, absorbing the water, holding on to it better, and utilizing it better. So I'll just say right now, the book is about eating your water, basically. Getting more hydration from vegetables, from healthy fats. Fats play a role in hydration because our cells are made up of phospholipids, and there's these aquaporins where the water gets through the cells, and so we need good healthy fats for hydration. I feel like I'm preaching to the choir, but I think the one thing, if you have a really unhealthy patient, the one thing you can do that I know, and if they would do it, that changes their lives, is add one green smoothie a day. Like, all these people know this, but truthfully, if you push that, one green smoothie a day changes lives.
So, Dana, that most of us were taught to believe you should have half your body weight in ounces of water. So 200 pounds, you should have 100 ounces of water. And, I know people sometimes say, well, gee, I'm not keeping up with what I need. And they'll go and they'll drink a quart of water. Yeah. And from reading your book, it's not so much the amount you have. It's
not quantity.
It's when you have it, and getting so much of your water from foods. And there's so many of the foods that we eat are dry foods that don't contain water.
Yeah. Right.
And I was telling you before, in preparation for this webinar, I've been having a smoothie every day, and they're delicious. But each smoothie, although it's different, it seems to have one of the same of each thing, a green vegetable. So could you talk about how you created these drinks?
There's like over 50 recipes for smoothies in the book. And actually we even have some recipes on like how to roast a chicken, I feel like, because we talk about diet too. So I feel like we've lost the art of cooking. Most of the young people don't even know how to roast a chicken anymore. So there's a lot of recipes in the book. But, smoothies are fun. It could be, you start with a green base, and that could be whatever greens you want, kale, spinach, Swiss chard, whatever it may be, with water. So you want to add water because you have to blend it up somehow. And then like a real base is ginger, lemon,
right.
Chia seeds. I love chia. Chia is
It thickens it up. Yeah.
yeah, and so one of the impetuses for us writing the book was my co-author Gina Brea. She had come to me with the information based on this water researcher in Seattle, Dr. Gerald Pollack. And once again, I feel like I'm probably preaching to the choir, but I'm going to say it anyway. He discovered that there's a fourth phase of water. And I remember this is now going on probably about 5 years ago. And I was like, what are you talking about, a fourth phase of water? We know that liquid exists as liquid. I mean, that water exists as liquid, ice, and vapor. And now you're telling me there's another phase of water, the simplest, we learned that in elementary school. And so we started to look at his research, and his research is on structured water or gel water. He calls it easy water. And it's slightly different. And this water that he's discovered, and that is the type of water that's found in nature. And it's also the type of water that's found within our cells. And, it turns out that water is not just, it's not just moistening. It's not just it's not just hydration. It's fuel. Water carries electrical energy, and what Dr. Pollack shows us is that, like a battery, that water holds on to energy because it's charged. There's negative charge there, and it holds on to it, and so water is actually a form of energy, like ATP is energy, electrical energy in the body. So it's way more than we had ever known. And that's so the idea of eating your water, you're actually eating more gel water or structured water. And that water is energizing to our
So
body.
I think that it's really important that we differentiate between water that people
Bulk water. Yep.
Bulk water versus gel water, because having lived and worked overseas throughout my career, I can tell you that in some of the nomadic societies where we were around, chewing roots and vegetables and anything that had, the ability to, those waters that are extracted from those roots and from the chewing of food stuff actually is more beneficial to this homeostatic part of the system than water they could just lap up.
Yeah.
Because the body absorbed it in a different way and used it in a different way. And so I think that there needs to be a differentiation. I have a number of people including my niece, who is an avid athlete and whatnot, who I follow and watch, and she's like pounding these 32 or 36 ounce waters in the morning after her workout and this and that. It's like, you're done for the day. And it's like, no, that is pointless and futile, because it's not getting us where we need to go, but it's not the kind of water you're absorbing and holding onto to allow your cellular structure to benefit from it. So can you speak to that?
Yeah, I want to first say it may be enough for her if she's eating really well. If she's having salads and and lots of greens for the rest of the day, she may not need more water throughout the day. There's some interesting new research that we don't put in the book that maybe even one glass of water is enough. And I know for me, there's days that go by that's like, wow, I have not drank all day, but I feel great, and because I ate really well that day, I had a ton of vegetables. I had maybe some watermelon, who knows what, but it's possible. And I think that there is some interesting research. We actually had a speaker at Acam a few years ago who talked about deuterium depleted water, and I can't think of his name. Do you remember his name, Howie? Well, so that is some interesting research, and that the idea that it's possible we only need one glass of water. But I also want to just go back to one thing about half your weight in ounces. There's, the 8 glasses of water a day, which I'm hoping everybody knows, like that means nothing. It comes from nothing. Just like the food pyramid comes from nothing, the 8 glasses of water a day comes from nothing. If push comes to shove and I had to give you a number, then a better number is absolutely half your weight in ounces is what you should be drinking. But we all, people sweat more than others. Some people don't eat as well as others. It was all of those things never took into account what you're eating. Actually, and that's not true, because when they first came up with the 8 glasses of water a day, or prior to that, it did include water coming from food. So So it's hard to say, once again, what is the perfect number for one person to drink. I can never answer that question. You have to know, once again, what it feels like in your body, when you feel, what your set point is, what feels great for you. So
you said before you're like preaching to the choir, but I would bet that there are probably quite a few people who haven't read your book yet. And so you mentioned your co-author, Gina, who has a very interesting background, and some of the stories in the book about our studies of tribes and how they get their water is very interesting. So can you tell us a little bit more about Gina and some one or two stories from the book?
Yeah, so Gina's an anthropologist, and Pat, you reminded me that I forgot about it. So one of the stories, and people, this is a pretty famous story about the Tarahumara tribe. They're these elite runners in outside of Mexico, in the deserts of Mexico, who literally, for fun, run 50-mile marathons, and they carry chia seeds in their pockets. So they sort of front load their water, and then they, she's talked about chewing on roots and that kind of thing. They would suck on these chia seeds and run 50-mile marathons without a problem. So Gina, yeah, it was a great collaboration between Gina and I. As I wish, if I had to do it over, I would have done undergrad in anthropology, because I think it is so much of our answers to modern day problems. We have them if we just look back and get some of our answers from some of the people that lived before us, because they're really interesting. So there's a bunch of those kind of stories of these nomadic tribes. I love the ones of the Bedouins. That was actually what her thesis was on how desert people hydrate. And the Bedouins are nomadic people. And this was something really interesting to me. Those black robes that they wear are basically, they're tents, and they're hydration tents. They hold in the moisture in the air. So it's, you think like, why are they wearing these black robes? There's actually a reason for them. And then the other thing is, desert people, they front load their water. They sort of gulp their water in the morning, because they certainly don't drink 8 glasses of water a day. And so front loading your water is one of the tips that we like to tell people. And a big glass, I even say 16 ounces first thing in the morning. Maybe you could throw a little lemon in there for some minerals and electrolytes. You could even throw a little real salt in there for more electrolytes. That's one of the ways of getting the water down to the cells and to a cellular level. But that's how desert people do it. And I think that's also another thing. So a green smoothie a day, front loading your water, 2 things that you can give to your patients right now that is honestly life-changing.
So after I went looking at your book again, I wandered on the internet and I found this great video of fascia, and fascia is like a fiber optic network running throughout the body, and you can see along the fibers little water droplets, and so you make a very big point about you got to get up and move, because movement moves that fascia and pushes the water into the cells. And it's something that I never thought about. You got to move in order to use your water.
Yeah. So we've always been told you got to move your joints to lubricate them, right? Now we really understand why. So fascia, as everybody probably knows, it's the network of connective tissue that surrounds every cell, every organ in our body. It's a webbing. It holds everything up. And prior to that video, Dr. Guimberto, I suggest everybody watch this video. It's actually quite beautiful on YouTube. I think it's called Living Fascia. Prior to him basically he put a camera under the skin of a living person and to look at fascia. And then he plugged off the blood supply so that all you could see is the fascia working. And prior to that, the fascia was never looked at. It was, when we did our dissection, you'd toss it away. It was dried and desiccated, and you get rid of the fascia to get to the organ or the vessel or whatever it is you're looking for. And when you see the video, you realize, wow, fascia is a hydraulic pump. It literally is another way of delivering hydration, which was another sort of aha, mind-blowing thing for me. We always learned that the only way to get fluid moves is through blood and lymph. Well, that's no longer true. Fascia is a delivery system of water, but it's also a delivery system, an electrical system, because water conducts electricity, and gel water or structured water conducts it even better. So
theoretically, you could be getting enough water, but because you're not moving right, not all the cells of your body will be getting the water that it needs.
Yes, right.
Yeah. So yet another reason why sitting is the new smoking. We're squelching delivery of fluid to our periphery. So you wanna move. And I'm not talking about exercising. We actually have recipes for micro movements, which is made up. This is a micro movement. It could be whatever you move. You gotta twist. We gotta move. We gotta, and we don't do that. We've stopped moving. Everything is so convenient now, and especially we're getting everything delivered. Our cars no longer, we have the cameras in our front of our cars, so we're no longer turning around to backing out of our driveways. Like, everything is convenient. And I think there's something like when we're born, I'm not going to remember the right number, but there are something like 700 different movements that our bodies make. And then by the time we're adults, there's only like 30. I'm making up those numbers, but it's something that extreme. And we have to just move and twist, including it like our eyeballs, like, move your eyes and nod your head and twist and turn. And so a third thing you can do with your patients is, when they're still in bed in the morning, have them just do a series of movements. Twist, do ankle spins, do wrist spins, twist and turn, sit up, twist. Twisting is a really good, important thing for us to be doing, and we lose that, I think, as we get older too. But movement is, yes, it is a hydraulic pump.
And one of the physical therapists we work with talks about lateralizations. As we get older, we move in a frontal plane. We don't move laterally. We don't twist. We just walk straight out. And philosophically, it's sort of, we lose our expansiveness and we become narrow in our physical bodies and in our thinking and in other ways as we get older. And so your recommendation is that you get up every 2 hours and move around, or not sit at your computer like you do for 10 hours sometimes?
Absolutely. If you have to set a clock to get up, and so once again, we're meant to pee every 2 or 3 hours. We need to be getting up and moving, and even if it's just, that's why standing desks are so good. I know we tell the story in the book, and I think it's actually BlackRock. BlackRock is a private equity firm, or they recently took their garbage cans away from the single garbage cans away from everybody's desks, so that they would have to get up and throw the garbage away. That's literally the reason why they did it. And I questioned that. I was like, is that really why they did it? They said, yeah. And I was like, that is brilliant. I love that. So once again, we have to stop making things so convenient. And
not to interject too much here, but we have a question that I think a lot of people were maybe curious about, is come from Greg. So what is structured water? If you do a really quick
Sure.
definition.
Yeah. So structured water is literally how H2O molecules, water molecules, how they sort of layer upon each other, and it's in that layering this is the thought of Dr. Pollack, and it's and there's a couple people it's a little controversial. There's a couple people who don't necessarily agree with him, but when you really read and try to understand of what he's saying, it's the one that makes the most sense. So it's in this layering of these H2O molecules that you actually, because oxygen, H2O, the oxygen in water, is a negative charge, and so those negative charges create a more negative charge, and they start to share oxygen between them. So it's thought that he actually calls it H3O2. And so it's because they're sharing of those electrons and in the way they structure. The other way like there's ways of building structured water. If you think about in nature, waterfalls create structured water, and vortexes. There's all these structuring devices. I don't think there's a lot of research that has gone on these structured devices, but I know it from my patients and myself that people tend to feel better. They feel more satiated when you're drinking this kind of structured water. I hope that helps.
So, Dana, there are two groups I'd like you to address. One is children and their special hydration needs, and then my group, the elderly. And because there was something very interesting about even it can prevent or help prevent concussions being hydrated properly.
Yeah, well, it's cushioning. It's that simple. Brain hydration. It's literally cushioning the brain better. There's way more to that too, because I also think there's detoxification that plays a role with better. In order to detoxify, you need to be hydrated, right? That's how lymph moves around. So if you're dehydrated, you're not detoxifying better. And then there's all this information about TBIs or concussions, traumatic brain injuries, maybe more due to toxins, our toxic environment, than it is to anything else. It's sort of new research, but I think it's really interesting research. And so there's lots of reasoning why. So, but the two big ones are literally cushioning and detoxification for preventing TBIs or concussion. In kids, it's hard. I'm not a pediatrician, but we do make the point of concussions and injury, even just injuries from sports. If you're dehydrated, you're more apt to get injured because you're not moving as fluidly, and your joints are not as, even including as a kid. But we all know that as babies who get sick and get diarrhea, they're really they don't have a lot of leeway room to be sick. They can end up in a hospital like that. So it is really important. And kids won't ask. Kids won't drink if they don't ask, if they don't have to. So because they're so focused on doing something fun that they don't want to miss out. FOMO, fear of missing out.
Now, you also talk about how dehydration also affects learning for children.
Yeah. Well, so we know that the first sign when you're even 2% dehydrated, which is nothing, we do that multiple times throughout the day. I mean, we lose a lot from sweating and peeing and moving our bowels. And so when you're just even 2% dehydrated, your cognition is impaired. So it's really for kids. It's interesting. Gina did something called the
hydration pilot project.
The hydration pilot program, and she worked with a school and set up hydration or water fountains. Basically, mapped out the water fountains, made it available for kids easier so that they know. And I think what was the really interesting thing is this was actually somebody I knew. This case study was somebody that I knew, somebody close to me in the publishing world, and in publishing this book, she told me about this, and she had discussed it with her teachers and her son, and basically he had ADD. He was a little bit of a problem kid, always getting into trouble, and instead of sort of reprimanding him, they allowed him to get up, go get a drink of water. So, there was that movement, hydration, and it changed everything for the kid. He became so much better at school just from those simple sort of ideas and things. And instead of saying no, you can't get up, they allowed him go get a drink of water, go move, come back. So they sort of embraced his ADD, and in turn, the hydration and the movement changed things drastically for him.
Great.
Yeah.
So can we sort of fast forward and look at the other end, the the elderly people who their needs become are different, become greater as we age.
Yes, yes. And Gina and I share this. Both our mothers were at the end of their lives in a nursing home, and frustrating and unable to help. My mom, Gina's mom. This is a fantastic story, and I think this will just set it so straight for people. Her mother was often rushed to the emergency room for urinary tract infections, and it turns out her mother was a very sort of proud woman and would never ask for help from one of the nurses' aide. And if she couldn't reach her water, she just would let it be. And when Gina started to study how desert people hydrate, she put two and two together, went to the nursing home, asked the nurses to put some chia seeds in her mother's orange juice. That was the only intervention that she did. And so she would drink this orange juice in the morning, and then whatever else, she still didn't push anything, but that was all it took. They never again had to rush her. She never had another UTI after that for years, or not years, but a year. So, elderly is hard. They have problems moving, so it hurts them to move. They don't want to drink because they don't want to have to go to the bathroom because it's a pain in the arse. And but it's a catch-22 because they'll be able to move more fluidly and feel better. And so it's that you have to push it.
And then we lose muscle mass as we get older.
Muscle mass, yeah.
Right.
Which is where a lot of the water, we store a lot of the water.
Exactly. So that's also why elderly are more at risk. And then people always ask about, well, I don't want to have to wake up in the middle of the night to pee. And as we get older, we do
withhold. Yeah.
Right. We do lose ADH, antidiuretic hormone, as we get older too. That goes down. So you do have to balance it. And I think sometimes a little glass of herbal tea with a little chia seeds is sometimes enough to get them through the night without, and hydrated enough throughout the night. So you got to play around with the amount that works for them.
And why are chia seeds so beneficial?
So if you've ever put chia seeds in water or coconut milk or coconut, it forms that gel around them. That they are really the star of the show in the book. Chia seeds are, so not only are they loaded with gel water, they are loaded with omega-3 fatty acids and our parent omega-3 fatty acids, so ALA, alpha linolenic acid, and they're fiber, so they are incredibly hydrating, and they hold onto that water like a sponge almost. And I think for me, when I started adding chia seeds to my smoothies, I just noticed that it quenched my thirst. It just quenches your thirst better.
Do you add the seeds, or you grind them up, or what's the best way to use them?
I like grinding them because you get more surface area. You'll get more gel on them. There is, when we wrote the book a couple of years ago, as we were writing it, we realized that, we didn't talk much about lectins. And this is something that a lot of people ask about too. There are people who can't tolerate chia seeds without soaking them overnight. And so those people, you really should soak them overnight. You can make you could soak them in water. You could soak them in like I said, coconut and orange juice and whatever you want. Make a chia pudding. That's a great, really hydrating snack. And they're soaked overnight. They lose their lectins. So that is another issue with chia seeds. But if you're not sensitive to them, then they're really.
One of our attendees wants to know, how do you make structured water? So if you add chia seeds to water, does that make it structured water?
Well, I think it structures it more. I think electrolytes help structure water. UV light helps structure water. We talked a little bit earlier about vortexes. There are these structured water devices that literally structures your water. So these vortexes but once again, there's no research on them. Somebody asked, I'm looking at the comments about a VitaJoule or similar gem water bottles. It's funny, I have one, and I love it because it's so beautiful. But I don't know. I don't think there's much research on them either. But I sort of feel like I can taste a little different. It feels a little liquidy, little more slippery than regular water, but it's not. I'm not sure. Those are these water bottles that have these gems, these crystals that, as we know, release energy. So there is probably something to it, but there isn't any research. CC asked that. Somebody asked about a comment on juicing. So juicing is good. I think there are many people who benefit from juicing. For purposes of the book, though, I think there is something more about the fiber in smoothies. So we talk about blending. A smoothie to us, we actually define it in the book. It's not like an ice cream smoothie where you're adding yogurt and all this stuff. Smoothie is just basically blended greens with water, and then whatever else you want to put in there. If you want to put, once again, blueberries or even a little bit of fruit. So I think that blended vegetables, so smoothies versus juicing, I think is probably more hydrating. It holds on to the fiber from that, holds on to the water in your system better than just juicing. And I think there's a place for juicing, but people have to be a little careful with juicing too, especially if they're juicing fruits and that kind of thing. It's a lot of sugar.
What would you say about alkaline water, hydrogenated water, or things along those lines?
Yeah. So also not a lot of research on alkalinizing water. And I personally don't think it's going to pan out to be much. But I will say, with that being said, once again, we are all clinicians, and I have had so many patients say to me, I started drinking alkaline water and I feel so much better. I notice a difference. I don't know if it's because they're drinking more water, they're hydrating better, but maybe there's something to it. There's just not a lot of research on it, so I'm not sure. As far as the hydrogen water, I do think there's something to that, and I think there is lots of research coming out about it. We don't talk about it in the book because it wasn't as widely known then, and I do want to say, though, hydrogen, there's some marketing scams and things about hydrogen water. Like, if you can't buy hydrogen water on a shelf. Once the hydrogen hits the water, it's gone. It's a gas. It doesn't, so there are devices that you have to do to hydrogenate your water and drink it. Is that the right word? Hydrogenate?
Hydrogenize.
Hydrogenize, yeah.
Yes.
So that's all I have for hydrogen. And
one of the benefits of smoothies than juicing is you do it in the morning. It's much easier to rinse out a blender than clean out a juicer.
True. That is true. So,
yeah.
So 2 questions relating to our older population is, one, chronic use of opioids, which is also leading to IBS. So we've got hydrogenation and we've got IBS, and then we have medication use. And how do you see rehydrating appropriately, maybe even segueing into being able to lower opioid use and improving the gut?
I'm going to go back to my very first statement. The first step you do in treating any chronic illness is start with proper hydration. Once again, I don't know what that is for that person. That person may need to drink 75% of their body weight in water, of their body in ounces of water. It may be different for that person. I don't know, but you have to find it. And I think it is absolutely the first step that you have to take before doing anything else. And I don't have any patients who are dependent on opioids in my practice, just because, so I wouldn't even know how to start with that. But I would say start with teaching them how to properly hydrate. Drink a green smoothie a day. It's going to change their life, right?
And then you do have a couple of examples about people with reflux who, when they started hydrating properly, they their reflux symptoms diminished.
That's based on the work of Dr. Batmanjalid. He also known as Dr. Batman. He's actually passed away, but he was probably the first person who wrote Your Body's Many Cries for Water. That is, a lot of people in our field knew that book. It was written over 25 years ago. And he was an Iranian prisoner, and he was a doctor. And in prison, all these prisoner of war, they were in these basically concentration camps and stressed and having these horrible reflux and ulcers, and the only thing he had was water. And he noticed that he told them to start hydrating, and their symptoms improved. And he published a couple things in some GI magazines after he came out. He was there for almost 2 years. Very interesting book. But, the other thing is, when I looked at medications that literally have been a causal factor of people ending up in the emergency room for dehydration, the list is unbelievably long. And these are people that are reported to the FDA medication side effect of causing dehydration. And we're talking things like, Prilosec, aspirin. We're not talking even about known diuretics or even antihistamines, which we know are dehydrating. We're talking about Ambien, all these medications that have been shown to cause dehydration. So
what would be a rational thought process towards that being a real side effect, right? So you're taking these medications, you're worried about potentially being dehydrated, but you don't know if the medication is interfering with your way to perceive that dehydration.
Well, that's when you need a functional medicine doctor. Seriously, my first and foremost job is to try to get people off of their medication using lifestyle, nutrition, hydration, whatever it takes, sleeping, shelter, community. So it's hard to say, but you start at the beginning, like once again, I feel like I'm preaching to the choir, but we all know, and we need to hear it all the time. Start at the beginning, start with hydration, start with nutrition, start with, we all ask the same questions, and it's just good medicine, right? Yeah. Somebody asked if they could see the book or the name of the book. This is it.
So I don't know, like Jason, I think you just threw me off the but I'm back. We will send out the information on the book, and what else do people want? The website for the video on fascia, which is important.
Yeah.
I am realizing that I don't know any practitioner I know who has questions on their intake form about hydration.
I bet you, because if I had it from 20 years ago. When I worked for Dr. Atkins. So I bet you more people than you think, it's hidden in there. So you ask about your diet. What do you eat and drink? What do you have for breakfast? What do you drink for breakfast? I think it's in there. I would think so, but I think maybe look back at your intake forms. I always take it takes literally 3 minutes. I always ask a patient, what'd you have for dinner last night? And patients will say, oh, that's not a good representation. I'm like, oh, tell me anyway, and then you can get an idea, what'd you have for dinner last night? What'd you have for breakfast this morning? And what'd you have for lunch yesterday? What'd you drink? Did you drink enough water? And is there any food that you absolutely don't eat on purpose? Those questions you get a huge amount of information from a patient, and it's typically more indicative than they lead on to be. So, yeah.
Great. So we mentioned a lot about smoothies, but you also, in wintertime comes where a lot of these nomadic tribes, they had a lot of stews and things that were just soups and stews, which are probably equally as important as smoothies.
Yeah. For sure. I just want to say something about winter. I actually think winter is if not more, as dehydrating as summer. I think the heat and the indoors, and we're not getting enough sunlight. I think it is it's not talked about enough. I think in winter we are all. I know me. And especially living in New York City, when I used to all the apartments I've lived in with those old radiators, and you have to throw a big pot of water on them just to get some humidity in the air. So I think winter is actually quite dehydrating. And yeah, based on some anthropological evidence that these tribes would have lots of stews, and those stews are filled with gel water. Think about bone broth. Bone broth is you let it get to room temperature and you actually get like a gel on top. It's loaded with gel water, and and I'm not saying gel equals gel. It's like gel from bone broth is probably there's obviously collagen and other stuff in it. But when you look at the composition of it, and when I know Dr. Pollack has done the research, for example, ghee is literally loaded with gel water. Ghee is just clarified butter. So yeah.
Dana and Pat, I'm just going to submit a poll to everybody asking if they think they drink enough water. And we'll see what results we get.
Yeah, I always ask my patients that, and I think
most people say no.
Yeah. It is literally, once again, a day in, day out, hour by hour thing that we need to think about. But it's not about. We don't have to. I want to just also say that we have to get the water bottles out of people's hands, because drinking ever more and more water is not the answer either. And it's not the answer because of what you think, because we want to get rid of plastic bottles. I do think that we're overhydrating. Those people you're just drinking all this bulk water and you're peeing it out, and there's nothing holding on to that water. There's no electrolytes. So that morning water, it's important to maybe throw a little pinch of sea salt in it to get some of those electrolytes. It holds on to it a little bit better. And you don't have to salt every single glass of water that you drink in a day, but maybe think about salting a few glasses throughout the day, because you want to use real salt, obviously, not sodium, not table salt. Table salt is garbage. You want to use like pink Himalayan salt, or literally a brand called Real Salt. I love that brand. If you've ever done a taste test, it tastes so much better than regular salt too. It's really, really salty and delicious, and it has the full spectrum of minerals in it.
But Dana, what would be the signs or indication of overhydrating?
The biggest one is leg cramps, Charlie horses. But you could also get fatigued because you're flushing out electrolytes. So you're drinking bulk water and you're peeing out electrolytes and you're not replacing them. So the same. I think some of the same symptoms of dehydration is overhydration. So I recently had a nurse who read the book, and she said to me, and she's super healthy. She is an athlete. She's a runner, and she drinks so much water, and she was getting leg cramps and couldn't figure it out, and sort of changed things up a little bit, started salting, doing a green smoothie, maybe drinking a little less water, and she noticed that her running improved, her energy improved, and she was healthy to begin with. So people who are even athletes will benefit from learning how to hydrate a little differently.
Dana, what's your favorite smoothie?
I mix it up all the time. I like my foundation, and the easiest one, and I still love it, is basically whatever greens I have in the house. Kale, water. I'll do a half a green apple, lemon, ginger. I always have ginger in the freezer. By the way, ginger freezes really well. I suggest peeling it, chopping it, peeling it, putting it in a plastic bag, and leaving it in the freezer. So it blends really nicely. It gives it a little more slush. So ginger, apple, greens, lemon, and then plus or minus chia seeds. Really easy. That's my favorite one.
Somebody asked about coffee and tea. What are your thoughts on that?
Everybody always asks about coffee. I have really good news about coffee. That anything less than 4 cups is not a diuretic. So coffee is okay if you're not sensitive to it, because there's a whole, caffeine can, I know if I have more than 2 cups a day, I get a little jittery. I get a little anxious. It's not good for me. It affects my sleep, maybe. So you have to, from other reasons, but from a hydration standpoint, anything less than 4 cups is totally okay. Yeah.
There's something called Bulletproof Coffee. Are you familiar with that?
I'm very familiar with it. My co-author's an anthropologist. That actually is an old Himalayan recipe that they used to use yak milk and their coffee. And so he didn't invent that. Or Bulletproof is not invented. He just made it really famous. But yeah, that's that the butter from the Bulletproof, or the fat that they put in MCT oil and or butter, actually can help those jitters with coffee. They can also, you're getting good healthy fat, so it also feeds your brain.
Share with our listeners what is Bulletproof Coffee? What's in it?
So it's a brand, number one, but it's basically a very clean coffee with MCT, medium chain triglycerides, oil. He calls it brain octane, and I think and it's butter, and then or ghee or butter blended together. It's actually, I remember the first time I tasted it, I was blown away at how good it was. Like, who would think butter in coffee? It's basically the best ice cream you could ever have. It's so delicious.
And medium chain triglyceride is what was used to treat epilepsy years ago, before Dilantin came out. There was you could live on that. That was how Atkins came up with the idea for the Atkins diet. So a little bit of.
Well, it's sort of I don't think it's the MCTs. I think it's more of causing ketones in our body.
Yeah, the ketosis. Yeah, because the minute you put a kid on Dilantin, you're lowering their IQ. So
yeah. So that's a very well-known treatment for seizures and children is a ketogenic diet where you're creating ketones, and doing Bulletproof Coffee in and of itself is not going to create ketosis. But I think if you're intermittent fasting, you're having maybe a little bit of Bulletproof Coffee, you're getting good fuel to your brain. And I definitely notice a difference when I do it in the mornings. It's caffeine and the MCT, it's really feeding your brain cells.
So Dana, I can't believe how fast the hour went by.
Time went by so fast. Thank you.
In fact, Jordan's been very good. He hasn't come in and told us yet. But
The thought crossed my mind.
I think it would be a great idea if our attendees either looked at what they were doing, hydration for themselves or for their patient, and could just send a little note, a success story, or whatever works. Send it to where would they send it to? Info at acam.org or someplace, Jordan?
So why don't we send it to info@acam.org? But also, I think Dr. Cohen would want to receive that directly.
I would love it. It would mean so much to me. So Dana at drdanacohen.com. Please reach out. Ask me any questions. I would love to be in touch with all of you. It's an incredible collaboration. And I think we all owe Howie a lot for really putting us two groups together.
And you know what, Dana, I'm a Pisces, which is a water sign. So
I love it.
So as we head out, I'm also going to be directing all the attendees to sign up for the next Acam webinar, which is with Dr. Hershkowitz. So make sure you guys are doing that as well. So any closing words, Dr. Hinden?
No, I think this is great. I mean, I'd like Dana to hold the book up one more time.
Oh, you got it. By the way, it's coming out in paperback in January. So tell your patients and friends if the hardcover is too expensive.
Mm-hmm.
It's also on the Kindle.
Right.
It is on Kindle. Yes.
It is on the Kindle. Right.
And they're great.
Well,
The smoothies are fantastic. I tried a bunch of them. I can't wait till it gets colder, and I want to try the soups.
Yeah.
And it's more than just drinking water. It's a really another way of living, making sure that there's so much food we eat today that is dried out, snack food and everything that we eat that not only isn't good for us, but it takes the water out of our system.
Right.
What was the email one more time, Dana? Sorry, we have people
Oh,
asking.
it's Dana, D-A-N-A, at drdanacohen.com.
I am
Okay.
so lucky, Dana, that I have you in my community. So it's great. And
Howie,
thank you so much for doing this.
so mutual.
Really,
Thank
thank
you.
you. Yes.
Thank you.
Wonderful
Thank
to
you,
have
everybody.
you.
Thank you, joggers. All right, goodbye.
Good night, everybody. Thank you.
Right.